Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this mini review that we are conducting for the upcoming September 2021 licensure examination for professional teachers. Please take note that we are covering for today the general education portion, which is entirely dedicated for the core subject of English. Before we jump in the main content of today's review, let me introduce something which is very factual. Now, here is the number of the 2019 LET results. Nationwide, there were a total of 2,228 and 963 test takers. So this is over a quarter a million test takers. And then one specific thing that I would want to highlight is this one. Out of the 100% of those who registered for this specific kind of examination, only 36.32% passed. Take note that this 36.32% is already a combination of those who passed in the elementary level and the secondary level of the licensure examination for teachers. So the exact number is 83,152. If you would try to compare these numbers, you would really see the discrepancy. In what sense? There is a greater portion of the 100% who failed the examination, whereas a smaller portion who actually passed the examination. Now, if you are someone who is planning to take the licensure examination and you would be seeing these numbers, you have to have a paradigm shift. Instead of asking, why is it that a lot of people failed in the licensure examination? You have to realign your thinking. Ask yourself this question. What made those 36.32% pass the said licensure examination for teachers? And what is the very answer to that? Today, you are to undergo a preparation with yours truly, Miss Jinky Rose L. Bayug. I am a licensed professional English teacher. And so, by the way, let us ask ourselves, when is the start of the real preparation when it comes to the licensure examination for teachers? Does it start when we already get our diplomas, get our certificates, and enroll in any institution that offers reviews? The answer to that, ladies and gentlemen, is definitely no. That is not when we start our preparation for the licensure examination for teachers. Let me use this one as an illustration. We don't fix the roof when it's already raining, but we do the fixing when the sun is still shining, which means to say that the very first day of yours in your college level as a freshman is already the start of your preparation for your licensure examination for professional teachers. Okay? It doesn't just happen just after you getting your diploma and being vested the degree that you already finished. Again, preparation is something which entails time and dedication. And so with that, let us now proceed to the main content of today's matter. Again, when we talk about the general education part of the licensure examination for teachers, this covers the 5 core subjects, namely English, math, science, Filipino, and Araling Panlipunan or history. And today, what we are to zoom in would be everything related to general education English. And here are the 5 subtopics under this subject. First would be writing in the discipline. Second is speech and oral communication. Third, we got Philippine literature. Fourth, masterworks of the world. And fifth, study and thinking skills. And what are these subtopics all about? Let's begin with the first one. This is what we call writing in the discipline. Since we are dealing with the general education part of the licensure examination, expect that the questions under the writing in the discipline is something that you actually learned during your college years as one of the general subjects in English. So what are the questions that are most likely to be asked in the exam prep proper under this specific category? I have here the first one. If you try to look at this question number 1, which of the following shows a 7th edition APA bibliography? Take note, this is something related to the subject research writing. It is a part of writing in the discipline because it seeks for someone who actually has a background about a specific topic to apply what you learned before in the said subject. So take note, it's the 7th edition of APA bibliography. So what is APA 7th edition? It's definitely a format in identifying your sources. This could be done in text and of course in the bibliographical portion of your research paper. So these are the options. Is it A, Villanueva A and De Los Santos R 2008, got your developmental reading, 1 Lorimar Publishing INC. Is it letter B? This time, the title of the book is written first. Villanueva A and De Los Santos R, the same set of authors, the same Lorimar Publishing INC. Is it letter C? This time, it's the year of the publication that was first set here and written. And after that, we have here the title of the book, the authors, and then of course the publishing house. Or is it letter D? It was first mentioned here the name of the publishing house, the year of publication, title of the book, and then the name of the authors. The answer for this one, ladies and gentlemen, is letter A. One thing that you have to remember in writing your bibliographical entries in APA 7th edition, you always identify first the last names and the initials of the author or the authors. Hence, letter A here is the correct answer. Then after that, please take note. After identifying the last names and the initials of the authors, we now have here the year of publication enclosed in parentheses. Then right after that, you have to indicate the title of the book. It's in italics. Take note. It should be written in italics, and it's only the first letter of the title that needs to be capitalized before finally revealing here the publishing house. Okay, so that's it. Number 1's answer is letter A. Let us now move on to the second question. Still something which is very much related to research writing. This time the question is, the following conform to the rules of in-text citation except. Take note, we're now focusing on in-text citation. This means to say that as you are writing the content of your paper, there is a need. There always is a need for you to identify your primary sources or secondary sources. So look at this one. Is it letter A? Plagiarism is an act of forgery, piracy, and fraud, so forth and so on. Dami and Hack 2016. Is it letter B? Okay? Dami and Hack 2016 define plagiarism as such and such. Is it letter C? In 2016, the same set of authors, Dami and Hack defined plagiarism as a specific definition? Or is it letter D, an act of forgery, piracy, and fraud, and is stated as a serious crime of academia? Is plagiarism. Ish Kumar, Dami, and Rihan Haq 2016. Take note, what we are identifying here in the second question is something which does not conform to the APA in-text citation formatting. So what would be the answer for that? Ladies and gentlemen, it's letter D. Why is letter D the answer? In in-text citation, what you only have to mention is the last name or the last names of the author or authors. So letter D mentions the entire name. So definitely this is the answer. Not just that one. In in-text citation, you could actually employ certain strategies in doing it. So first one is like what you're seeing in letter A. First thing that you do is you had the term and then you had the exact words quoted, quote and unquote. And then we got here the names, take note, last names of the authors. That is acceptable. In letter B, we actually had a shift. We first identified the sources of information, who are Dami and Hack 2016 was the year of publication before finally revealing their definition of plagiarism. Take note, you always have to use direct quotations, or should I say quotation marks, when you are identifying their words directly from them. And letter C, you would notice here that instead of mentioning first the author's last names, we first identified here the year when the information was published. And again, this is one of the three major ways on how you can do in-text citation in research writing. Okay, so again, answer for number 2 is letter D. Now let's move on to this. There are items in the licensure examination for teachers that would definitely test your reading comprehension ability. And when we talk about reading comprehension, it's not limited to identifying certain things or such. There are times that you might be asked this specific one, a thesis statement. What is a thesis statement? It is a single statement that exemplifies the writer's stance or point of view on a specific matter. So here is the given paragraph. Did you know that a typical child needs 2,000 calories for an entire day? And Burger King's Whopper with triple cheese has 1,200 calories. That is far more calories than anyone needs in a day. Fast food consumption has risen 500% since 1970, and today reaches nearly every part of society. Fast food is harmful because it rapidly increases weight, causes high blood pressure, and leads to sluggishness. So when we talk about the thesis statement, you have to have one single statement that summarizes the point of the paragraph. Here are your options. Is it A, fast food has negative health effects? Is it letter B, fast food offers a lot of convenience? C, fast food effect varies from person to person? Or is it D, fast food attracts a huge portion of the population? Again, the thesis statement is one single statement that summarizes and presents the point of view of the writer based on what was presented in the previous part of the paragraph. So what would be the answer here? It's definitely letter A. Fast food has negative health effects. Why is that so? We go back to the given paragraph. They mentioned about a specific thing. It's definitely about Burger King's triple cheese Whopper. And then certain details about it are mentioned in the later part or the latter part of the paragraph. So what is the one single statement that really summarizes the point? Here it is. The stance of the writer of this: fast food has negative health effects. Again, there are a lot of questions in the licensure examination that would test for your reading comprehension, your ability to understand. Next, fourth question, you have to identify a type or strategy in concluding a paragraph. Now, you might be saying, I'm not familiar with the definition of the following choices. But then again, it's the principle of common sense that you have to practice here. We all know that we have different majorships, right? But then you have to please set the tone into this. But whatever your major is, you have to make sure that you go far beyond memorizing. You have to learn to understand. So here's the given for number 4. If people continue to eat lots of fast food, they'll put their health at risk. If kids don't make better choices today, they won't grow into healthy adults. Is a conclusion that exemplifies? Is it A, prediction, B, call to action, C, providing a solution, or is it D, an uncertain situation? The answer to this is definitely letter A. It helps a lot that if there are terms in the choices that are actually close to the meaning of the other term, then you have to employ the strategy of elimination. What do you have to eliminate? Eliminate choices which are definitely far from the correct answer. So here, uncertain situation, definitely very far. Providing a solution, is there a specific solution offered here in the item? The answer is there is no specific solution, though it's mentioned here that they have to make better choices. But then what are those specific better choices? It's not mentioned, so you have to cross out letter C. We're left with letters A and B, call to action and prediction. Call to action means to say you're letting the readers do a certain act. That is why we call it call to action. Is it like that? Now, letter A is prediction. What makes letter A the correct answer here? Look at the choice of word, if. If people, if kids. The usage of the term if is already an enough basis for you to say that indeed this is something that employs prediction. It's a conclusion that predicts for a future outcome. Okay, so that's it for number 4. Number 5. Suppose that I am writing the literature review of my paper. I paraphrase Rustan's explanation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Should I still cite my source? Is it A? Yes, for I pertain to Maslow's explanation. B. No, given that the idea was already paraphrased. C. Yes, for it is still their idea, though I paraphrased it. Or is it D? No, for Rustan is only a secondary source of information. Ladies and gentlemen, the correct answer here is letter C. Regardless if you paraphrase or you quote the exact words of your source, you have to identify your source. So who is my source? Is it Maslow or is it Rustan? Your source is Rustan because you are getting the information from Rustan's explanation about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, so that's it. It's very clear. Even if you paraphrase things in research writing, you still have to identify and cite your source. Next, you have to fill in the blank with the appropriate opinion-making signal. It signifies the context of the sentence. Here you go again. You might be saying, I don't have any knowledge about it, about opinion-making signal. Again, you have to employ the principle of common sense. Okay, here's question number 6. Based on what I know, Shakespeare is a phenomenal playwright. Blank, he is a distinguished poet as well. For you to arrive at the correct answer for this item, you have to take note of context clues. There are words here in the statement that could lead you to the correct answer. Okay, so there is the first statement and there is an incomplete second statement. Since it is the second statement that you have to identify the correct word to supply it, then you have to consider both statements. Do not leave the other statement out because that is the key to finally identify. So here's the first statement, something about Shakespeare, a description about him. And then another description is made about him as well. Okay? The words as well here is already your clue. So which among the 4 choices would actually have the same equivalent as the word as well, at the same time, something that would complete the thought of the given item? It's letter C. In addition, you're saying something about the guy and you're adding another thing about him. Okay? Next. Question number 7. To be married just after a night of meeting each other, blank, that Romeo and Juliet embody that of 14-year-olds. Again, you have to consider the entire context here. Do not be one-sided. So which among these choices would complete it? It's letter C. I am convinced. Why is that the correct answer? There is this previous statement. To be married just after a night of meeting each other. It's an implication that someone who says this statement is in complete disbelief of what he figured out as a reader. And so in the second statement, the next statement, he or she makes this one. I am convinced that Romeo and Juliet embody that of 14-year-olds because of their specific action. Okay? Next, question number 8. Contrary to what the popular culture affirms, take note, you already have a clue here, the word contrary. To what the popular culture affirms, I blank that Romeo and Juliet felt true love. So what is the popular culture's stance? That Romeo and Juliet truly loved each other. That's the popular culture stance. But then it says here contrary. So the speaker here definitely opposes that notion. I oppose that Romeo and Juliet felt true love. Again, you have to look for clues in the given item. And question number 9. Speaking for myself, true love is tested through time. Blank, the quality and longevity of marriage is a factor too. Take note of clues. In the second statement, there is this set of words, a factor too. A factor too. You have to add. So the answer is letter B, besides. Right? Besides. Now, Miss Bayug, you said that we have to select an option that signifies adding of information. Isn't it that letter C is a possible correct answer as well? Let's try to put the words here on the blank. Speaking for myself, true love is tested through time. After that, the quality and longevity of marriage is a factor too. Yes, it might be used to add certain details to what was previously mentioned, but then you try to imagine the situation. After means to say that there is a process or there could have been a step being made. And we definitely are not talking about steps here. We're just linking idea number 1 to idea number 2, which makes letter B the correct answer. And this now is the last question for writing in the discipline. Definitely, the characters represent the people of reality, those who are easily swayed by their emotions. Blank, the Merchant of Venice is a far better play than Romeo and Juliet. So what's the correct answer here? It's letter B. For all these reasons, what reasons do we pertain to? The reasons stated in statement number 1. The characters representing the people of reality and emotions being easily swayed. For those reasons, The Merchant of Venice is a far better play than Romeo and Juliet. So what did you figure out? Questions under this category, writing in the discipline, is something that entails general English indeed. General things that you study in terms of writing. Okay, now let's move on to the second category, which is this one, speech and oral communication. Yet, let me just tell you that there are certain words here that might be quite unfamiliar to you, but again, your ability to understand must be present all the time. So let's begin. This is a sample question. Again, there are terms here which might not be familiar to you, such as this one, Shaw's 10 Commandments of Speaking. What do we know about that? But then let's try to look at it. Which of Shaw's 10 Commandments of Speaking is reflected in this? Talk should be a two-way street. Is it A, learn to listen? B, speak to be heard? C, vary your approach? Or is it D, have something to say? Again, we are explaining this specific statement coming from Shaw's 10 Commandments. Talk should be a two-way street. Talk is definitely just like what I'm doing right now. I am producing sounds and I make sure that there is a message out of the sounds that I produce. So that's talking, basically. But then for it to be said, it should be a two-way street. What does that mean? The answer here is letter A, learning to listen. Talking should not just be about releasing. It should also be about processing. So learning to listen is an essential part of communicating. Okay? Look at this one. Let's compare letter A to the other options. B, speak to be heard. Talking already here is mentioned, and you are going to emphasize the idea of speaking. So it doesn't prove the notion. It should be two-way process or two-way street. Vary the approach. Vary means to say more than one. And here in the statement, it says two, exactly two. Right? And then letter D, have something to say. Have something to say. Again, it emphasizes the idea of talking. So which among these choices would actually balance it out? It's letter A, learning to listen. See? Next. Second question. If you uttered painful words to someone and later apologized, you may still do something to ease the situation, but its effect on the receiver was already made. That's the situation. This proves that communication is it A, dynamic, B, continuous, C, irreversible, D, non-sequential. So here we're looking for an adjective that completely summarizes what was portrayed in the situation. And that is letter C, irreversible. Whatever you release, whatever word you say, that's it. The damage has already been done. So it's very, very important that you have to be very careful on your choice of words and how you deliver the words. Next, question number 3. Situation is defined as one of the elements of speech communication process. Here, in the options, you would see various definitions of situation as an element of the speech communication process, except, so you have to identify the choice that does not correctly define situation as an element of speech communication process. Is it A, the situation determines who will listen? Is it B, this determines who the speaker will be? Is it C, it is the person who makes the decision to communicate? Or is it D, it is the prime element for it binds the other elements together? The answer is letter C. I see. How do we identify correctly whether this is a good definition of situation when it comes to speech communication process or not? Okay, situation determines who will listen. Definitely. You have to set the context before you determine who will be your target audience, who will listen to you. Second, this determines who the speaker will be. If you know the context, they are your target audience. Who is the best person who can speak during the situation? Okay? And then letter D, it is the prime element for it binds the other elements together. Correct. If you know the situation, it's easy for you to identify your target audience as well as your resource speaker. Letter C, it is the person who makes the decision to communicate. No. Okay. It no longer defines situation, but C already defines the speaker. Okay. Next, number 4. Here, you are presented a situation. Again, it's a matter of comprehension and understanding. Thinking of a positive effect, Mr. De Mesa, the company's auditor, once decided to bring his 2-year-old son to their office. Everything seemed well until 10:30. The baby began crying uncontrollably. Suddenly, the company owner thought of asking Mr. De Mesa a significant matter. But as the latter opened the door of the former's office, the baby's voice was magnified. What element of speech communication process was presented? Again, you might not be familiar with the terms, but then a little knowledge about the terms would actually help. So background knowledge would be very essential as well. Is it A, barrier? Is it B, source? Is it C, channel? Or is it D, interference? Barrier. Familiar with the term language barrier? Something like that. Source means to say the one saying the message, the point of origin. C, channel means to say the medium on which the message is being conveyed. Interference, we all know what interference is. So what do you think is the element of speech communication process it was presented, the crying baby? The answer is letter D, interference. Because of the baby's cry, the message could not be delivered from the CEO of the company to Mr. De Mesa, the auditor. Okay, so it's interference. It's not a barrier. Barrier is something which is really of a higher degree compared to interference. Okay, next one. We have here question 5. The following statements are true about decoding. Again, decoding. So you have to identify something that does not describe what decoding is. Is it A? It includes perception. Is it B? It entails interpretation. Is it C? It is a process a receiver undergoes. Or is it D? It always includes misunderstanding. And the answer here is quite obvious. You have to look out for terms which actually could lead you to certain generalizations, such as the term always. So letter D is the correct answer here. It's not decoding when it always includes misunderstanding. Why? The term always. Does misunderstanding always occur? No. Decoding means to say the ability of the receiver to process what he or she received from the source. The source is the one talking or speaking. The source is the one who actually had the written information. That's it. Okay, letter D. Now we got number 6. Number 6 would technically be testing your skill on the application of speech communication principles. Odd one out. Identify which does not belong to the set. What would be your basis in identifying which does not belong to the set? If I were you, say the word out loud in your mind. Again, it's a technique proven to be very helpful in identifying something that does not belong to the set. Say the word out loud in your mind. So letter A, neon. B, defer. C, lenient. D, beacon. Then right after saying the words mentally, you have to identify similarities among the choices. Which among these 4 are quite similar with the other choices? Again, let's try it. Neon, defer, lenient, beacon. What similarity can you identify? Please take note, this is speech and oral communication category. So it has something to do with pronunciation. Neon, defer, lenient, beacon. 3 words here exemplify the long E sound. Those are letters A, C, and D, which makes letter B the one that does not belong. Why? Letter B is a short E sound. Defer, defer, compared to neon, lenient, beacon, you see. Okay? Next one. Still odd one out. Pie, foil, cow, men. Pie, foil, cow, men. Now here in set 7 questions for the specific category, words here contain diphthongs. What is a diphthong? It's a word that actually has a play in the vowel sound. It's a combination of the vowel sound. So let's repeat. Pie, foil, cow, men. There is one word here which definitely does not employ the combination of vowel sounds to make a diphthong. What is that letter? It's letter D. Men is really men. Men. It's a singular vowel sound compared to cow. Like cow. It's like a battle between A and O sound. Foil. Pie. Again, this is application indeed. Question number 8. Decide. Climate. Extension. Atonement. Decide. Climate. Extension. Atonement. Now here, the different, something that is different is on stress. Stress. Syllables. Words comprised of syllables, and syllables are stressed or unstressed. So you have to learn how to identify that one. Decide, climate, extension, atonement. Most of the words here are actually stressed on the second syllable except for one, and that is letter A, climate. Climate is stressed on the first syllable. Number 9, this is second to the last for this category. Wishes, phrases, husband, thousand. Take note on how I pronounce the terms. Wishes, phrases, husband, thousand. These words, they all contain S. But then 3 out of these 4 choices actually would have the S sound like Z, except for one. And that is A, wishes. Wishes is really pronounced as wishes. But then phrases, it's not phrases. Phrases. Husband. Thousand. Oh, how is that so? There are certain words in the English language that when you have the S letter in the middle, it should sound like Z. Right? It should sound like Z, except with this letter. A, wishes. You see that the S here is also in the middle, but then it's followed by the letter H. That is why the S sound and the H sound combine, which produces the smooth sound. Compared to this letter B, phrases. S here is S here has the letter E after it. It's a vowel, right? Then B, vowel after that. S, vowel after that. So if it's a letter S in the middle and it's followed by a vowel letter, it has to sound like Z. Phrases, husband, thousand. And the last question for this, odd one out still. A, tsunami. B, mnemonic. C, psychology. D, schizophrenia. The answer is very obvious. 3 out of these 4 choices would have silent letters in the start. Obviously, those are letters A, B, and C, which makes letter D the word that does not belong here, because here we pronounce the entire term, schizophrenia. Schizophrenia. You say the letter S, and you really make it obvious that letter C and H are pronounced as well, compared to letter A, tsunami, then B, mnemonic, and C, psychology. Next, let's move on to the third category for our English general education. Here, you are to be tested on your knowledge about Philippine literature. Okay, Philippine literature. This might be things taught to you when you were still in elementary, in high school, more so during your college years. Okay, let's start. Here, there is an exact statement taken from a source, and far away in the middle of the fields, a cow lowed softly in answer. What sense image is used in this excerpt from Argilia's work? So definitely Argilia is the author, and you simply have to identify the sense image. Sense image. So your choices are A, visual, B, tactile, C, olfactory, or is it letter D, auditory? There is a clue in the given statement. A cow lowed softly in answer. So when someone gives an answer, what specific sense is utilized? And definitely the answer here is letter D, auditory, your sense of hearing. Okay, that's it. Next, the second question. In what Philippine historical period was Nick Joaquin's May Day Eve set? Wow, you might be telling me this one. Miss Bayug, I am not an English major. Why should I know about Nick Joaquin's May Day Eve? It's because it's one of the literary texts in Philippine literature that must be studied across programs. So it should not just be studied by English majors or anything related to literature. Right? So what would be the appropriate or correct answer for this? In what Philippine historical period was Nick Joaquin's May Day Eve set? So we're pertaining to the setting in the story. It's a short story, by the way. Is it A, during the Spanish era? Is it B, Marcos's regime? C, Japanese occupation? Or is it D, the American occupation? The answer here is letter A, Spanish era. Some of you might have a knowledge about this specific short story, and you might be saying, Miss Bayig, it's actually during the Marcos regime. Let me clarify something about that. It was written post World War II, during the time of Marcos. Okay? It was written during the time of Marcos, but then the setting of the short story is during the Spanish. We're asking here the setting of May Day Eve, not the year when the story was written. Okay, next. Question number 3. Dialogues from a father mimicking someone. She's still a baby. I'm telling you, she's old enough to have a baby. These lines from Alberto Florentino's The Dancers portrays. Okay, so you have to consider yourself as the one who delivered the lines of the father. Is it A, thrill, B, hope, C, sarcasm, or is it D, bitterness? What's the answer to this one? The obvious answer is letter C, sarcasm. Right? You have to reflect on the lines of the father and try to understand what's actually the motive behind these lines. Someone is like a baby still for someone else, but I'm telling you, she's old enough to have a baby. Indeed, a display of sarcasm. Okay? Next, number 4. Which of the following lines illustrates personification? I think as early as elementary grade 3, we were already taught about personification, simile, and metaphor. And in general education, this is one of the figures of speeches that would commonly be asked. Your knowledge about personification. Is it A, right? The trees, right? To teach the trees all that I could. B, and hold secret a bird's flowering. C, a bamboo flute is heard far away, or is it D, and so while thoughts went to and fro? Personification means to say we're giving inanimate objects human characteristics. So which among these 4 would be the correct answer? The answer is letter D. And so while thoughts went to and fro, thoughts going to and fro. Okay? Or you might be asking me, Miss Bayug, isn't it that letter C is also a good answer for personification? A bamboo flute is heard far away. But then try to analyze the meaning of this one. When you say a bamboo flute is heard far away, it means to say the sound of the bamboo compared to the letter D option. And so while thoughts went to and fro, we could just imagine it. Personification is literally indeed. Next, the 5th question. Of following are characteristics of local color fiction except the term local fiction. Is it A, it describes the local setting? B, it tackles the bias and prejudice of the characters? C, it emphasizes politeness through address markers? Or is it D, it centers on the mores and traditions of a locality? Guys, please look for clues. Local color fiction. Choice A has the term local, and it's paired with the term setting, local setting. So it could be a characteristic. Letter Letter D says here it centers on the mores and traditions of locality, local color fiction. So letter D might be a characteristic as well. So we're left with letters C and B. So which between the two might not be a characteristic of local color fiction? Look at letter C. It emphasizes politeness through address markers. Okay? So there are certain terms in local color fiction literary text that could denote respect for elders, a meaning for a specific term. So letter C might be a characteristic of local color fiction, which leaves us with letter B. It tackles the bias and prejudice of the characters. Bias, we know what it means. Prejudice, somehow related to that term. Okay? It's somehow related to that term. So which among these 4 statements might be a different one from local color fiction? The answer is letter B. Letter B. Now let's have question number 6. Again, an excerpt will be used to test your ability to understand. One day, just as they were finishing their lunch, Kaugong announced, I'm not going to wash the dishes anymore. He threw out his chest and lifted his chin. Who says so? Asked Kamaldang, holding up her chin, higher than his. These excerpts from Filipina Colendrino's Why Women Wash the Dishes show that Filipinos are. So look at this one. It's more on analysis before having a word or words that could summarize the entire point. Is it A, Filipinos are prideful? Is it B, Filipinos are meddlers? Is it C, Filipinos are superstitious? Or is it D, Filipinos are procrastinators? Again, you have to understand the situation presented. And what's the answer to this? It's definitely A, prideful. Filipinos are prideful in that context. Washing of dishes. There is an association. Women should be washing the dishes always. But then you look at the battle here, right? The battle here between the sexes just because of one specific household chore. So again, it's a display of pride. Next, question number 7. Alfredo Salazar undergoes epiphany at the end of Dead Stars. Epiphany means, so you have to look for a word which is synonymous to the term being identified. Is it A, regret, B, insight, C, confusion, or is it D, realization? Epiphany. You might have a background knowledge about the term because in one of the celebrations that we have in an entire year, Epiphany is one of those. So Epiphany means basically letter D, realization. Right? And then we have to highlight or we have to emphasize the meaning realization and put it into the context. Alfredo Salazar undergoes epiphany at the end of Dead Stars. Epiphany is something which is positive, something which displays a transformation. Indeed, letter D is the answer. Question number 8. Things that are beautiful have a way of hurting. I destroy when I feel hurt. These reveal that the character is, again, analysis, comprehension, understanding. Is it A, the character is mad? B, the character is vindictive? C, the character is authoritative? Or is it D, the character is goal-oriented? Correct answer here is letter B, vindictive. Might be asking me, Miss Bayug, letter A might be a potential answer as well. But madness is madness. Vindictiveness is another thing. Madness is something which is quite obvious. Being vindictive could just be first, right? Unobserved. But it is a characteristic. Okay? Second to the last question for this category. The following are Filipino writers except, take note, your background knowledge. A, Amado Hernandez. B, Liwayway Arceo. C, Serafin Quintero. And letter D, Carlos Romulo. Now, these are the types of questions that most test takers would simply be guessing, especially if they don't have any knowledge about the following persons. But then, go back to your elementary years, your high school years, college years. I know that one time during those years of study that you had, you encountered these names because they are one of the canons in Philippine literature. So which or who among these is not a Filipino writer? The correct answer is letter C, Serafin Quintero. Serafin Quintero sounds like a Filipino name, but he actually is a Spaniard. Okay? Next, the last question for this category. The period of enlightenment in Philippine literature is best explained as a period when writers produced literary texts which demanded changes in. Again, here's the dilemma. You might not be familiar of this specific period, the period of enlightenment. How could we identify the correct answer? Is it A, trade, B, the church, C, the government, or is it D, the church and the government? Ask yourselves, what is the major objective of writing? Is it to change something about the trade? Is it to specifically change something about the church or the government for letter C? Or is it letter D? Changing the ways or some of the ways of the government and the church combined. The answer here is obviously letter D. In case you're confronted with these types of questions, you have to make sure that you actually pick the most sensible answer. Okay? And now we move on to this. Category number 4 under general English is master works of the world. So expect for questions such as these. Number 1. Helen of Troy is a character in blank mythology. You know what? If you couldn't answer this, I just do not know whether you listen to your high school English teacher or your college English professors. Is it A, Norse mythology, B, Greek mythology, C, Roman mythology, or D, Egyptian? The obvious answer here is Greek mythology. Helen of Troy is also regarded as the face who launched 1,000 ships. Next, question number 2. Which of the following works inspired Dr. Jose Rizal in writing Noli Me Tangere? Is it A, by George Orwell? B, Things Fall Apart. Things Fall Apart is something from Africa, okay? Written by Chinua Achebe. C, Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Bistow. Or is it D, The Brothers Karamazov? The correct answer here is letter C, Uncle Tom's Cabin. What is this novel all about? Take note, Uncle Tom's Cabin is also a novel written by an American, and this mainly talked about the struggles of the Black Americans in the land of the white. So somehow it resembles the struggle of the Indios against the Spaniards in Rizal's No Limit Tangere. Next, question number 3. The following are approaches to literary criticism. Oh, take note. Literary criticism is a general subject in college. A, Cubism. B, Marxism. C, Moralism. D, Feminism. So what is the answer here? Which is not an approach to literary criticism? It's letter A, Cubism. Cubism is a style of art. It's a specific way on how you practice art. Cubism. Marxism is a literary criticism that focuses on the social classes, okay? Or should I say social clashes in the literary text. Then moralism is something that focuses on the moral and the immoral. Feminism highlights the strength of women through literary texts. So letter A is the answer, Cubism. Next, question number 4. Around 47 BC, when Julius Caesar's troops won the battle in Zila, he said, Veni, vidi, vici, which is translated in English as, I came, I saw, I conquered. What figure of speech does it employ? So again, this is about your knowledge about figures of speech. I came, I saw, I conquered. What is this figure of speech that it employed? Is it A, climax, B, consonants, or D, onomatopoeia? Are there some familiar terms here? Hopefully. Okay, let's have a background about the figures of speech that we have here for our choices. Onomatopoeia is something that concerns sound. Okay? Sound, such as the ticking of the clock. That's an example of onomatopoeia. Consonants, from the term itself, would have to deal with consonant sounds. Assonance will have to deal with sounds again, but this time it's no longer the consonant sounds, but the vowel sounds. Climax, okay? Climax means to say highest point. So if we try to go back to the given, I first came, then I saw, after I came, and finally I conquered. You see the elevation of the events. Therefore, the figure of speech employed here is letter A, climax. There might be times as well that you do it the other way around. You could first say, I conquered, I saw, I came. If that is what will be presented to you, that's actually the opposite of climax. How do we call that? It's an anticlimax. Okay? Next, number 5. Which of the following plays of Shakespeare? Okay, take note. Shakespeare, he's known worldwide, and most of his plays, poems, are a part of the canon. Okay, canon means to say it's a required reading. Okay, magnifies the villainy of the Christians towards the Jews. Is it A, Hamlet, B, Macbeth, C, Romeo and Juliet, D, Merchant of Venice? Now, a concern might be this one. I don't have the time to read the plays of Shakespeare. Definitely, we don't have the luxury of time. But then take time to read the summary. At least the summary. If you can't read the entire play, then read the summary at least and get familiar with the names of the characters and what is it mainly all about. Okay, so Romeo and Juliet, We know this one. It's a love story. Hamlet, right? Hamlet and Macbeth, there's something common between these two. What is common? It's about power, right? Kingship, rulership. Merchant of Venice, what is this? Actually, that is the answer. Right? That is the answer. That is the play of Shakespeare, where Christians were portrayed as the not so Christian in behavior, and that they were actually considering the Jews as the inferior set of people in society during the setting, right? At the setting of this play. So Merchant of Venice is the answer. We're halfway done with this category. The following fictional works have film adaptations. So this now entails your knowledge on current events as well, right? Current events in the area of literature. A. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. B. Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. C. 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. D. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Which means to say that these are originally novels. And these novels had film adaptation. So 3 out of 4 were adapted in film. 1 out of these 4 until now still has no film adaptation. So which is that? It's letter A, Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. B, C, and D, they all have their film adaptations. Next, number 7. In George Orwell's Animal Farm, it ends with, okay, the creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again. But already it was impossible to say which was which. So you see the switching of someone looking like a pig, someone looking like a man, so forth and so on. What literary device does this sentence use? So again, as someone who's not an English major, you might be shocked with these terms, but again, you have to at least master the definition of the basic literary devices, right? And the figures of speech. So is it A, imagery? From the term itself, right? Imagery, painting a mental picture of something, of the situation. Is it B, allegory? This is a quite difficult term for non-English majors, but then allegory means to say that something could be an object or a character could actually mean a bigger thing in reality. Is it C, symbolism? From the term symbol, something might symbolize a bigger picture as well. Euphemism. Euphemism means to say making words sound better than how it should. So instead of calling someone, what's this one? Instead of calling someone a sweeper, a street sweeper, you could say a sanitation engineer. That's euphemism. So what's the answer for this? It's letter C, symbolism. Okay, how do we prove that one? Pig man. Pig man. It's impossible to say which was which. So there is an implicit association being made between the animal, pig, and a human being. What does it say about humans? Okay. Question 8. What is common among these writers? So this one, again, is your knowledge of something current. J.K. Rowling, Charles Dickens, and Ian McEwan. Is it A, they are all English writers? B, they are all American writers. C, they are all Nobel Prize winners. D, they are all contemporary writers. The correct answer here is letter A. All of them are English writers. Okay, next, the second to the last question. Gitanjali is an example of a blank poem. Is it A, lyric poem, B, narrative, C, dramatic, or D, persuasive? There is one out of these 4 choices, which is obviously not a type of poem. So you have to cross it out. That's letter D. So remove it. Okay? And then, so we're left with letters A, B, and C. Dramatic, narrative, and lyric. If you don't know what Gitanjali is, it would be quite difficult for you to answer this item. What is Gitanjali? It's a collection of poems, definitely, by an Indian writer, an Indian poet, Rabindranath Tagore. But then what is it? What type of poem is it? Lyric means to say you center on emotions. Narrative means to say you are telling stories. Dramatic means to say it's meant to be played on stage. So what is the answer? It's a lyric poem. It's a collection of poems by Rabindranath Tagore, which is all about attacking the emotion of the reader. The last question for this category. Please remember that we are in masterworks of the world. Medusa's hair turning into snakes, Odysseus's 10 years of wandering, and Oedipus's marriage to his own mother reveal that the Greek gods and goddesses are. Right? So you have to go back to your lessons about Greek mythology, Norse mythology, and other famous readings, right, of the world. If you actually do not know the background of these certain instances, for example, why did Medusa's hair turn into a snake? It's because she was punished by Athena, the goddess of virginity, right? And then Odysseus was again punished by the gods because of what? Right? The men of Odysseus did something so immoral to the daughter of another land. And then Oedipus, right, what happened to him? He married his own mother. He didn't know that it's his own mother whom he married. So this one proves that the Greek gods and goddesses are, letter D, vengeful. They won't give you a punishment unless you do something wrong to them. Okay? And then we got the last category. This is what we call the study and thinking skills. For this specific category, you really have to employ a lot of analysis and comprehension. Why did I say that? Look at this question. Angel is taller than any other girl in her class. There is no instruction given. It's just a statement. But you have to make again, the principle of common sense work here. There are no instructions given. What should you do? And there are words here written in capital. What do you have to do? It means to say that you have to pick a statement that closely resembles the original statement. So that's the statement. Angel is taller than any other girl in her class. Is it A? Angel is the tallest girl in her class. B. Angel is the taller girl in the class. C. Angel is taller than other girls in the class. Or is it D? Angel is the taller than other girls in the class. Now, in this part of the general education part of the exam, you have to be careful of everything. You have to be specific of details. Lapses in grammar would mean to say that you have to eliminate that choice already. So what do you think is the answer here? Is letter A. Angel is taller than any other girl in her class, which means that Angel is the tallest. Okay? Next, the second question. In the sentence, he went below. It's a simple statement. Below is A or on. Noun, adverb, adjective, preposition. You know what? A lot of you might pick letter D here, preposition, below. Below because it's a preposition. But no, it's not a preposition here. Why did I say that? Okay. Below, just because it's spelled like BELOW, is not always preposition. You have to look into the context of the word. How is it used in the sentence? He went below means to say that there is a general movement with whoever went going that way, going below. So again, if it's a general movement that is signified in the statement, even if you know that it's a preposition originally, again, feel the sense of movement. If you feel that one, then it's not a preposition, it is an adverb of place. Take note, it's an adverb of place. So if I say she stayed behind, she stayed behind. We all know that behind is originally a preposition, but then look at the context, a movement. She stayed behind. That is an adverb of place. Okay. Next, question number 3 is something which is related to the previous explanation that I had. Which of the following sentences uses through as a preposition? Is it A, she ran through? B, we walked through the area? C, I could see her through the lens? Or is it D, the guards won't let us go through? The answer here is letter B. We walked through the area. This time it's used as a preposition. Okay? Let's try to compare letter A with letter B. When I say she ran through, you see, the general movement, the change in direction. So letter A uses through as an adverb of place. Versus letter B, when I say we walked through the area, we're specifying here that I walked through a specific place. I'm talking about an area. And how did I walk in that specific area? It says here, I walked through the area. That is when it's considered as a preposition. Okay. Now you might be saying, Miss Bayug, it gives me an I for letter C, therefore. It seems as though that through here is used as a preposition as well. But then if you try to really have the meaning of letter C in general, I could see through the lens. I could see her through the lens. Right? It's like you're seeing someone through, means to say through the aid of the lens, which is definitely not a preposition. Okay. Next, question 4. She wrote a first-rate report. The report is, so we're unlocking meanings here. Is it A, ordinary, B, excellent, C, mediocre, or D, run-of-the-mill? First-rate means to say excellent. Okay? It's an idiom. Next one, the brain can detect admonitory information. So you simply have to identify the definition of the term admonitory. Is it A, valuable data, B, past experience, C, advanced knowledge, or is it D, warning to avoid danger? The clue here is the term admonition. Admonition means to say warning. So obviously it's letter D. Okay, we're reaching the last 5 questions. Transcendental meditation is practiced in yoga. A, momentary, B, supernatural, C, supernatural, D, interpretative. Oh, Ms. Bayug, the first thing that I'm noticing here is that B and C are the same. Believe it or not, even in professional licensure examinations, there are questions like that. Choices are the same. So what do we do with that? For example, let's say that supernatural in really is the correct answer here, and there are 2 supernaturals here. What do I choose? Is it the letter B or the letter C? The answer which displayed the word. So if there are 2 supernaturals here, and supernatural is indeed the answer, you have to go for letter B. Why? That's the first, right? If you come to think of it, if you're a test maker and you're going to have choices, definitely, if you already revealed the correct answer and you re-reveal the correct answer, you go with the first one. You first mentioned about the correct answer as letter B, therefore go with it. Okay, go with it. Please take note. This really happens even in professional licensure examinations. Okay, and it might lead test takers to confusion. What should I be shading, the letter B or the letter C? Should I shade 2 letters? No, never ever shade 2 letters. Okay, next. Reading comprehension. It would require you to understand and of course to go into the specifics of this paragraph. So here's the paragraph for 7 to 10. Sometime in December of 1981, Dr. James Naismith, a gym teacher at the YMCA College in Springfield, Massachusetts, was trying to keep his gym class active on a rainy day. He wanted a vigorous game that would keep his students moving. After rejecting a few other ideas because they were too rough or not suited for the Walden Gym, Naismith wrote about the rules for a game with peach baskets, right, fixed to 10-foot elevated tracks. Naismith's students played against one another, passing the ball around and shooting it into the peach baskets. Dribbling wasn't a part of the original game, and it took a while to realize that the game would run more smoothly if the bottoms of the baskets were removed. But this game grew to be one of the most popular sports in America today. Can you guess which one? So you look at this paragraph. There is a question here. It's the last statement of the paragraph. Can you guess which one? You already have clues here. Dribbling wasn't a part. Also, what sport do we have that specific skill, dribbling? Okay, so what are the questions that we have here? Comprehension questions. And these might be questions that would ask you to locate specific details. So which of the following sentences informs the reader of Dr. Naismith's goal for his gym class? So sentence 1, 2, 3, and 4, what do you have to do? Go back, right? you have to go back. If you're presented reading comprehension questions, do not be afraid to flip the pages to the previous pages for you to answer the questions correctly. It's not actually a rule that if you flip it to the next page already, you can no longer go to the previous pages back. No, okay? So for reading comprehension, if it would actually be better for you to read the paragraphs twice or thrice, please do it. Okay? Take time to read and to understand, but be mindful still of the time allotment. So which would be the answer for this question? It is sentence number 2. It's the sentence that that reveals the goal or objective of Dr. Naismith for his gym class. We go back to this. Okay, let's locate sentence number 2 here. It's here. Okay. He wanted a vigorous game that would keep his students moving. So that's it. That's the objective. Then question number 8. Which of the following sentences shows Dr. Naismith's good decision making? So again, you're presented with sentence numbers and you simply have to go back to what you read and identify that sentence number 3 is that sentence. Okay. Number 9, sentence 3, that very same statement, highlights the significance of blank in any game. So for you to get the correct answer here, you go back. Rules, venue, players, equipment. The answer is rules. Okay. All the answers for reading comprehension items must be based on what you read and not on your opinion. Take note of that. Okay. If it's a reading comprehension kind of test, you always have to go back to what you read, what's available, unless the question would ask you to have this inference. Okay. And number 10, this is the last question. What sport does the paragraph talk about? You remember that there is a question mark in the end of that paragraph. So what is this? It's about basketball. It's about basketball. Never in the paragraph that the term basketball was mentioned, but then there are a lot of clues that this indeed is basketball. Do you dribble when you play tennis? Do you dribble when you soccer? Do you dribble when you do volleyball? Definitely not. But with basketball, you do dribbling. And so because of that, that is the best answer, the correct answer. Okay, so that would end our 50-item live discussion of questions that you might actually encounter during the licensure examination for teachers on September 2021. But let me actually have this one conveyed to you. The goal is what? Gaining the professional license. Okay? That's your goal. You have to gain the professional license. And why do you want that license? I don't know what are your personal reasons. But you actually have to challenge yourself a little bit. If you could challenge yourself to actually top the examination, then have that one, right? Top the examination. If you would want to be a record breaker, imagine, okay? Imagine, think of yourself doing that. Think of yourself achieving that. Why? Because what you have here on your mind is very significant. Whatever you put in here inside would have physical manifestations. If you think that you cannot do it, most likely it will have its manifestations. But if you think that you can and you will do it, the more likely it is to happen. So what are the keys in gaining a professional license? Number 1 is indeed preparation. The emphasis that preparation does not just start on your review sessions after you graduated already in college. Preparation entails from day 1 of college up to the last day of your review. And preparation is not just about having mock examinations, answering sample questions. No. Preparation also includes some sort of relaxation, pacifying yourself. So please remember that. Second is that dwell more on understanding. Okay? One major mistake that most test takers do is that they just dwell on memorization. Okay, here's a term. I'll memorize the definition. Term, memorize, term, memorize, term, memorize. There is danger in relying so much on memorization alone. Why? Because if terms might be altered, if definitions or explanations might not be the same as what you memorized, then that's a problem. So please make sure that when you memorize certain terms, you also take time to understand. So even if in the test proper, even if it's a different set of words that the test takers indicated, but it has the same context with what you know about the matter, then you could still understand and you could still identify the correct answer. So please train to understand. Please train to understand. How do you do that one? I want you to really read a lot. Read a lot. Okay? Math problems if you would want. Okay, go. Okay? Go with problem solving reading, reading comprehension, magazines, newspapers, online articles. You have to saturate yourself and practice thinking, reading with understanding. And lastly, humility. Humility. Please take note. Not all test takers have the ability to enroll themselves in review centers. They opt for self-review. And of course, if you're given a privilege to actually enroll in a review center, do not brag about it. Right? Do not brag about it. Keep it to yourself that you enrolled for a specific licensure examination. Keep it to yourself. Just do your thing of preparing. Never ever exalt yourself. Don't ever tell, oh, blah, 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 blah. These are my preparations, blah, 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 so forth and so on. Just please prepare in silence. Okay? Again, please prepare in silence. And then one more thing. Based on my experience, I took the licensure examination for teachers 8 years ago. Oh, less than 8 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. That was September 2013. I You also have break times during your examination. Long hours of test and then shifting to another category, there would be a break time. Then during the break time, because during my time it was face-to-face, face-to-face examination, physical examination that we had. There were times that the other test takers would actually be sharing the perspectives, high perspectives about specific items that were included in the examination, and then they said they would be explaining this was what I answered, so forth and so on. Okay? Again, you have to please prepare in silence, answer in silence, pray in silence. That is what you have to do if you want to gain the license. Prepare, understand, and be humble. And lastly, please don't forget, you want this license, obviously not just for yourself. You want this license because you know that this license is your key to opportunities. And these opportunities that you'll be given in the future, they're all coming from God. So as you are doing this preparation, as you're praying for this day, as you're praying for the results, positive results, please remember, do this for God's glory. Thank you, everyone, and I am wishing you very well for your examination.